Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Friday Morning at the Funhouse alongside, you know it, Mr. Martin Popoff.
Yeah, how you doing?
Good, man. How
Ready
you doing?
ready to roll here on a cool summer day after a massive heat wave. But yeah, it's cooled down a little bit of a reprieve here in Toronto for a little while, so ready to roll.
Yeah, same here. I think we had the same heat you guys did the last 2 days. It was pretty hot and sticky. It's like
Yeah,
today
yeah,
is like, I think it's gonna be like about 10, 15 degrees cooler, which is okay by
yeah,
me. So,
yeah.
so we've got an interesting topic here today. So we've the last couple of shows, we've kind of like each one was kind of like a branch off of the last, and this one maybe as well. So this whole concept of like big albums and potentially some of these huge albums that sold lots of copies, everybody listened to, everybody bought, everybody talks about hit singles, Grammy Awards, all that kind of nonsense. But we kind of wonder why they were so big, right? I mean, that's kind of like the concept of this episode, right, Martin? We realize and
Yeah.
we fully understand that these were pretty huge albums, million selling plus or whatever. And we don't necessarily dislike some of these albums, but we find some of these albums a little on the ordinary side. I think that's a word you use, right? Ordinary.
Yeah.
And we're kind of like, yeah, why were these albums so big? We're going to try and get to the root of that whole issue today on this episode. We've each picked 10 albums that were pretty big albums. We may like them or we may not like them, but we're wondering why the hell were these albums so big? What did people see in these records that we're kind of missing, maybe? It's like so. I don't know if you want to add anything to that before we start talking about.
Yeah, yeah. And in some cases it's almost like why did it get so incredibly big versus other ones in their catalog? And as I'm going through these albums, there's a lot of albums here I really like. But yeah, you wonder like, why did the buying public show up so much for these? But to kick things off, I just wanted to do the mic drop band of all these bands. This isn't one of my picks, but just to put almost everything else we're going to talk about in our place. It's the immense Garth Brooks. So I took out my Garth Brooks collection. So just put it in perspective here. Anybody seen that album before? Knows that album? Guess what? It's Diamond. This is a Diamond album. So that's his first album. No Fences comes out. And anybody kind of remember this one? Anybody remember this guy in the classic rock world? 18 times platinum.
Yeah.
And then we've got Rope in the Wind, 14 times platinum. The Chase, Diamond, and In Pieces, Diamond. So it just blows me away all the time. I mean, I don't have anything good or bad to say about Garth Brooks, but it's just crazy how when the public flocks to albums and they just start selling and selling and selling, it's like everybody thinks they have to own this particular guy. So I mean, it's incredible. I think there's one album in between, but we've got one, two, three. This is like five albums, and yeah, Diamond 18p, 14p, Diamond, Diamond.
And the
Like,
crazy thing is that's a perfect example of something in the country genre. We could probably pick out a handful of other artists in like pop, R&B, hip hop that falls into the same category where mega selling albums back when people were still selling mega
yeah,
albums, right? And people in the rock world would just look, it's like, I don't know, I couldn't tell you one song from any of those albums, or I don't recognize
yeah,
the album cover, but yet
yeah,
millions of people bought them. Millions of
yeah,
people bought them. And you're like,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, Garth
Crazy.
Brooks was a phenomenon, man. I mean, that guy has sold a lot of albums. I don't think I could tell you one song that he sang, like a title.
Yeah.
I don't think
I
I could.
know, I know, it's nuts. So okay, so now like let's get to the serious ones, the bands we love. I actually don't even have a physical of this, I don't think, which is bizarre. I'm not sure why, but Yes, Fragile, I'm going to kick off with. So Yes is, I think this is their second biggest selling album. I think 90125
Yeah.
is triple, right? But so this is a double platinum album, and I wanted to pick it just to have that conversation about how it's almost credit. It's a credit to the fan base of rock and roll in those early days that their minds could be expanded enough to send a record like this to double platinum. We know why it's double platinum. It's got a hit in this song called Roundabout, which is a pretty complicated song. It's got a lot of parts. It's got a happy vibe to it. It's also got a little bit of like a minor key feeling verse to it, but it's got kind of a big happy payoff. But it's got instrumental sections. But the other funny thing about this record is that they go off and do these individual pieces on it. The rest of it isn't particularly that well known. Um, the band isn't all that well known at this point. They're like, what is it, 4 albums in at this point. So yeah, I do it does surprise me that an album like that can be so huge off of one fairly complicated hit and a long song. But again, I think it's like testimony, just to see Yes's success all the way through is just really cool to see that kind of completely bizarre music, and it gets very bizarre. I mean, Close to the Edge is crazy, and Tales of from Topographic Oceans, of course, Relayer is crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just cool that happened. So next one I have is this one here, Metallica and Justice for All. Um, Kind of the same story as Yes in a way, but mixed with this concept I always have is had that people like heavy metal, they just don't know it. Although this one doesn't really subscribe to that as much as Metallica would. So yeah, I can almost look at this as a 2-4. But I remember even talking to Kirk about it once about how big the Metallica album got. But then I got to thinking, here we've got, this has its own Yes roundabout on it in one complicated long song, daring the public to get into it, really dark storyline. But again, testimony to the fact that, it's not surprising that metalheads could be on board. And it's also like a weird sort of twisted power ballad in a way, right? But to have that much of the public get on board for this. So yeah, this is 8 times platinum. But I don't know the story, whether it's an 8 times platinum as a single album or as a double album, right? So
I
did
mean,
it
either way, you're talking a lot of records, right?
yeah, either way, it's a lot of records. The reason it flummoxes me is that on CD it was one, and then my original vinyl was a double album, right?
Two, yeah.
Um, so, but but beyond one, I mean, this is just like a crazy math rock album with bizarre production. It's way harder to assimilate than the first 3 albums, and even more so than Metallica. Now, obviously, much of the success of it comes as the bounce back from Metallica. But they were already on their way and being a big band. So you could almost throw in Master of Puppets in here as well and say, I can't believe that many people who are at least inclined or amenable to metal could be this inclined and amenable to metal that is this extreme, right?
Yeah, because there was
So
no
that
other
was cool.
albums like it that were selling those kind of numbers. Not even close.
Exactly.
Not
Yeah.
even close.
And yeah, and that's a bit of a theme, not particularly with much of the rest of my list, but it's a theme I wanted to address. And when I was talking to Kirk, it was more about the Black Album and how that album almost proves that idea that people love heavy metal, they just won't admit it or don't know it. So when an album like that comes out, which is practically a doom album, to have a record like that, um, do that many copies and go well beyond diamond is just a really cool thing to see. And it falls into that category of the normies saying, I have my record collection. I need a heavy metal album in here. Which one will it be? Well, I'm going to pick Metallica kind of thing.
And it's an interesting point too. Um, you mentioned how, because it is so much of that album is basically like a Doom record, right? I mean, the vibe is there, but that didn't necessarily translate and rub off on other bands. I think we touched on it a couple minutes ago, where it's like there weren't a lot of other bands that were doing those kind of numbers. You have to wonder if, like, to non-hardcore metal fans, Metallica all of a sudden was the cool guys on the block. Everybody should listen to them just because that's it's
Yeah.
hip, it's happening, it's now. The video for one was a really well put together video. It was kind of creepy and weird, and I think that caught the attention of people. So I just think Metallica had this it factor. It's not like you had someone who was like, "Oh, I'm going to buy Metallica and Justice for All. I really like this. I'm going to go buy Hall of the Mountain King by Sabotage. I'm going to go buy Metal Church's new album." Right? I don't know if that happened a lot. It's just all of
Yeah.
a sudden Metallica became the cool kids. Let's all jump on that bandwagon, you
I
know.
like that. I like that idea. The it factor in Cool Kids, but beyond the it factor thing, is this idea that consumers of art will appreciate good art. Um, and even despite what genre of art that it's in, right? So it's like the public showed up and said, these guys are really good at what they do. I'm unfamiliar with the language they speak, but they are really good artists, and I'm a buyer of good art, so I'm going to buy this record,
Right.
kind of
Hmm.
thing. Yeah.
And to take it one step further, and again, I totally understand what you hinted at earlier in that the success of And Justice was magnified after the success of the Black Album. But let's just say that they did gain a lot of new fans by the time of And Justice for All, who maybe weren't longtime metal fans. The Black Album then becomes the perfect album for those people who are maybe buying into the Metallica thing, but kind of on the fence because it is
Yeah.
kind of extreme. And then the Black Album really isn't, and that's much more palatable to maybe non-metal fans, right? All of
Yeah.
a sudden, it's
Yeah.
like, oh, I guess I can listen to this thing called heavy metal.
Yeah. All right. So my last one, we talked about good art. Let's talk about some bad art. Theater of Pain, Motley Crue. So
Yeah.
I've got this on the list. This is almost a record that sold a lot of copies, 4 times platinum, despite itself, despite being bad art and despite the band kind of phoning it in. So the narrative around Motley Crue is that they just did so much drugs and booze and just so much drama going on in their lives that they weren't really paying attention to being rock stars and making good albums. And the band kind of feels that way about both Theater of Pain and the follow-up Girls, Girls, Girls. But just based on the bad publicity and the excitement coming in off of Shout at the Devil, this album does well. But it's got the very it's got this sort of dirty, annoying production sound. It's Tom Werman not sounding like Tom Werman. Tom Werman sounding more like Spencer Proffer. But it's got the unimaginative cover of "Smoking in the Boys' Room," just a dumb Kiss song by Brownsville Station, essentially, right? Um, and so that does well on here. You've got the power ballad "Home Sweet Home," very maudlin power ballad, so that sells it as well. So you've got the novelty cover and the rote power ballad selling it. And nobody remembers pretty much anything else on here. I think the best song on it is the opener, City Boy Blues. But yeah, this album, the band will say it as well. This album and Girls, 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 I think they just sold despite themselves. That people just showed up almost like Motley Crue zombies after Shout at the Devil and just says, I guess I got to buy it because it's Motley Crue kind of thing. So
Yeah.
those are my first three.
Well, I'm glad you picked that. I almost picked Girls, Girls, Girls. I think either one applies here, but I didn't want to think that Pete's always shitting on Motley Crue. It's like, well, but it applies here, right? It totally
Yeah,
does.
yeah.
All right, my first choice for today is going to be Heartbeat City by the Cars. Mega album. I think, Martin, is this bigger than their debut? I think this sold 4 or 5 million
I think
copies.
so. Yeah.
Yeah, this is pretty big. So, and this comes, after a couple of moderate but not huge Cars sellers, right? The first two albums did very well. Then, they kind of like fell into,
Yeah.
Panorama was pretty big. Shake It Up was fairly big, but this was bigger than the both of them.
Yeah.
And you have to wonder, is it the Mutt Lang kind of connection here, right? Because this sounds like a Mutt Lang album. There were a couple of radio and MTV hits on here, but most,
Yeah.
other than like, so we got Hello Again, you got Drive, right, which are the big hits. You might think, and basically that's it. Those are the three big hits. The rest of the album for me is kind of okay, kind of forgettable, but it just goes to show you how by like the mid 80s, hit singles and hit videos are so important to album sales. And I think you can't really take for granted how that will drive a maybe somewhat middling album to all of a sudden enormous heights. But just think about it, like 4 or 5 million copies. I mean, that's a pretty big album. and a very poppy album for the band, right? I think a little bit of the edge of the earlier stuff is kind of gone by this time, but I know a lot of people who love this album. I think it's a pretty good album. I don't think it's a great album. I don't know if it necessarily should have been a bigger seller than the two that came before it, which arguably I think I find a little bit more fun. But hey, it's all about the hit singles here. I think that's an important point. So yeah, that's my first choice for today, Heartbeat City. Next up, I'm gonna go with Euthanasia by Megadeth. Solid record and a string of solid albums by them. But to kind of go back to the thing we were talking about with Metallica. So you have Peace Sells, you have So Far So Good, So What, you have Rust in Peace, you have Countdown to Extinction, right? All pretty Megadethy sounding albums. I think this was kind of, and maybe you could say Countdown is as well, but I think this is kind of like their Black Album, where all of a sudden they're making their music a little bit less technical, a little bit more mainstream metal. A lot of people have said to me, this is not a thrash album. They're not a thrash band anymore at this point. I think it's kind of front loaded. I think Reckoning Day, Train of Consequences is fun. To Le Monde is great. Elysian Fields. I think maybe the back end kind of starts to lose a little steam for me. It's a good album. Again, another million selling album for them. Uh, I don't know. I think some of the other albums that came before it deserved greater success, when they were still struggling to get platinum and gold. And then this comes out. It's like all of a sudden they're on like a little roll. Every album is an automatic platinum seller. Don't know. Good album. I like it. I just wonder, they've got better albums in my opinion. All right, next up. All right, I always pick on this one, but I'm going to do it again. Genesis, We Can't Dance.
Yeah.
This one I don't understand. I don't understand this one at all. I mean, I'll give you Invisible Touch has some really good songs on it. I always kind of come down on the latter Genesis stuff. And I know there's some good stuff on here. You got No Son of Mine, you got Jesus He Knows Me, Driving the Last Spike is pretty good. I hate the title track. Too many ballads on here. Maybe too much Phil Collins pop oriented stuff. Not enough Genesis originality. People bought this by the millions. I mean, did this one even get diamonds? Probably close to it if it's not, something like that.
Sure. Can't
Yeah,
remember. Yeah.
7 or 8, easy. Um, yeah, I don't get it. I just
Yeah.
don't get it. It's wishy-washy Genesis for me. Couple good tracks, but again, when you have a couple big singles and especially ballads in this time period, so this was what 1991. You're going to talk big business regardless. And what's interesting is 1991. Probably, when you really think about the history of this band and kind of when Phil decided to leave, with all the new stuff in the music world that's becoming popular at the time. So you got grunge, you got alternative hip hop, the pop music, dance music. I think Phil kind of bowed out of Genesis right at the perfect time because I
Yeah.
think the kind of lifespan of this type of music probably was almost over anyway. And
Yeah.
as it proved with the next album that they did with Ray Wilson, I think by then Genesis time has come with or without Phil Collins, and I think Phil's solo career started to sputter too as you got into the mid late 90s. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's my last for this round. We Can't Dance by Genesis.
Yeah, it's a good choice, and I agree that that kind of music, it's surprising it sold so well because that kind of music is so out of fashion. But I suppose another reason it sold so well is the build up and the immense success of three records before that, essentially,
Yeah,
right?
even though there was a little break in between this one and the
Yeah,
previous one, but yeah, it's almost like this one was going to do well regardless, but
yeah,
this was the last one. This was going to be the last one.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, my next choice is Iron Butterfly In-A-Gadda Vida. It floors me every time I'm reminded that this is a four times platinum album,
Wow, is it really? Holy shit.
which is crazy because it's just dark, dated, depressing psych rock. It's got a side one with five songs that I can't picture any of these songs in my head. I don't think any of them are a hit. And side two is one whole long song, In-A-Gadda Vida. So it's a little bit like our Metallica thing where it's like people like heavy rock, they just don't know it, right? People gravitated to this evil sounding Diabolus in Musica riff done on a keyboard and this haunting vocal. And yeah, a radio version is a little more palatable. And I suppose there was a lot of publicity just because, haha, look how long this song is, kind of thing, right? That was a big deal of this.
I mean,
Great album
it's a
cover too.
product of its time for sure. I mean, it's the
Yeah, but
psychedelic era, but yeah, you have to wonder like what 4 million people would find good about it. I mean, don't get me wrong,
yeah,
I like the album a lot, but
Yeah.
I
It,
can't imagine like moderate rock listeners would be at all interested in that, right? I mean,
yeah.
and the album really is not heavy.
No.
Other than
No.
that riff, I mean, it's a very weird kind of, for all the acclaim and all the success it's had. You look back on it, it's just like,
Yeah.
is it really the classic that we all think it is? I
Yeah.
like it, but it's yeah, it's
Yeah. Pretty weird.
that's a
Pretty
great
weird.
pick. That's a really good pick. Yeah.
Okay, next I've got AC/DC Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. So I love this album, of course, but for this thing to do 6 times platinum, so and people are kind of fooled. Some people
Yeah.
are fooled that they don't know the lead singer's dead and they got a new lead singer and they're thinking Brian Johnson's going to be on this album because in the States, ticking
Yep.
off the
Yeah.
band, it gets parachuted in. You've got the hubbub around Back in Black and for those about to rock. But you think about this album. So part of it is the being fooled. Part of it is AC/DC is just the biggest band. Everybody's talking about them. Everybody's excited about them. Here's some product coming out. But along our theme, like albums that shouldn't have been huge, it's the album cover certainly doesn't work. There's
No.
nothing commercial about that album cover. Um, the songs on here, there's really no hits on here except for Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, which it is the kind of song, it's very simple and spare. Um, but it does sound like a hit song of that simple style. It's just so immediately accessible. It's humorous. It's doesn't have a lot of parts. It's easy to sort of tear apart. So, it does well for some not great reasons. But then also, I think this one song on this album does a whole bunch of heavy lifting as well that helps it do well. But it is surprising that this album did that well. And part of it is the continued success for like a decade of Back in Black, bringing up the sales of everything. But man, this is a deep tracks album. I mean, I
Oh
look at
yeah.
this and people don't know most of these songs
I
on.
oftentimes cite that as my least favorite of the Bon Scott albums.
Mhm.
I,
Yeah,
I just don't find a lot on there that really excites me. And that was
yeah,
genius marketing on the record label because they rode the coattails of Back in Black, and all of a sudden people couldn't
yeah,
get enough of AC/DC. And for people here in North America, like they had never heard that album before. So that's a brand new AC/DC album, right? I
yeah.
remember buying it and thinking, what is this? This is not that there's no Brian. This is not the big, massive Back in Black sounding AC/DC. So yeah, I mean, and
And
it's sold like hotcakes.
yeah, and I can imagine a lot of those 6 million people being pretty disappointed with that because it's kind of like really simple boogie rock and stuff and some semi-mellow stuff and
It's
some
no
some
Power
longer
Agents, no Let
things.
There Be Rock at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. And then my final one for this round is also AC/DC, Who Made Who. Um, this sold 5 times platinum. And I am surprised by that because number one, AC/DC is not doing that great at this time. Although Back in Black is still selling. Um, the entirety of the album is just sort of a wasteland of semi hits. I mean, they did stick For Those About to Rock on here, and You Shook Me All Night Long. Perhaps some buyers who didn't really know what they were doing flipped this over and saw You Shook Me All Night Long, and we're going to buy it for that reason.
Right.
Maybe For Those About to Rock, but of course the biggest song on here is Who Made Who, which I don't think was that big a song. I remember it be doing kind of a big deal, but I love it. I think it's a really good AC/DC song, but I really don't know. I don't know what did the heavy lifting on this to bring it to 5 times platinum. I would say the heavy lifting came from Back in Black. Just that thing continuing to sell and being an insane seller. And then almost like equally, You Shook Me All Like Night Long being on here, and who probably more so Who Made Who, but then You Shook Me All Night Long. But we've got DT on here. They stuck Ride On here, but DT and Chase the Ace instrumentals. We got Ride On here. It's just a very short. It's almost EP length.
Yeah.
It's like
It's
just
like
a
a little
short.
hodgepodge of stuff, maybe for the people who want to buy a compilation, even though it's really
Yeah.
not that either, right? Yeah.
Well, that's a good point because that album cover tricked some people too.
Yes.
It just looks like a new AC/DC album.
Yeah.
So I'm sure like that album's way better than the Dirty Deeds album cover. So that tricks some people. So I'm surprised by that one as well.
All right. My next choice is Nebraska by Bruce Springsteen. Uh, I don't know. In the early 80s, an all acoustic, very personal, demo-like Bruce and his guitar album doesn't, especially coming after like The River and all those albums that preceded that, to get something like this and to have this sell, a million plus copies and be very beloved by the Bruce Springsteen fan base is kind of surprising to me. I find this album very depressing and just not at all that interesting. And I've heard versions of some of these songs played live with the full band by the E Street Band, and to me, they're much, much better. And I always wondered what the fascination with this is, especially at the time, because you could see something like this maybe late '60s, early '70s picking on with the general public. But again, it just at the time, it just goes to show you the popularity of Bruce Springsteen from the like kind of mid 70s through like the mid late 80s into the 90s. I know a lot of people are down on him these days, but I just never understood what was so fascinating about something like this during a time period where music was changing. A lot of music was getting much, much more into using new technology and different sounds and styles. And here you have this throwback, very bare, kind of depressing, cold sounding album from Springsteen. And so that's my next choice. And from there, this one always kind of surprised me, and that is Fleetwood Mac Tusk. So this is the big follow-up to, of course, Rumors, which is one of the biggest selling rock albums of all time. They come out with this double album that kind of almost comes across like a collection of solo pieces by the various band members. We talked about Fragile before and how, despite the fact that it has all these kind of like little interludes that are like solo pieces and some stuff that's not very commercial, people really gravitated to Fragile. I mean, this is kind of like the same thing. Here you have all these kind of weird, strange songs by Lindsey Buckingham, and he's trying different sounds. Nothing other than a handful of tracks, nothing really sounds much like Rumors or the Fleetwood Mac album. And while there are some really good stuff on here, really good songs on here, you do have a couple classic Sarahs on here, of course. You got Sisters of the Moon, which is terrific. Angels on here, Brown Eyes. There is some really good stuff on here. But it's long, it's rambling. It took forever to make in the studio. At the time, I think it was the most expensive album ever to make. Took them forever in the studio. The cocaine was flowing freely. And it sold, a couple million copies. And I think this would have been a much better off single album. And there are a lot of people who talk about this album today and think it's one of their greatest achievements. Oh, is Fleetwood Mac experimenting? They wanted to do something different. It's to me, I think they experimented a little bit too much on this. But people do love it. Hey, and that's great. I like parts of it. I don't like all of it. So that's my next pick. And then I'm going to go with Heart Brigade, which sold millions and millions and millions of copies. Of course, this is during Heart's big kind of pop rock, pop metal, hair metal period. Outside songwriters and whatnot. It has the huge hit, All I Want to Do Is Make Love to You, which to me, I think was the driving factor to this selling so many millions of copies. I personally think the two albums that came before it, and you can go even further a little back. We talked about Heart a couple times in recent episodes, their early 80s albums. I think that's a nice string of records. They all sold well. This one, I think, was one of the biggest ones. I personally think the two albums that came before it have much better songs. A lot of what's on here is kind of unmemorable, but you know what? It's the whole blowback effect. Heart is on a roll, has one huge hit single on here. It's going to do well regardless. I don't think the band looks back on this album very fondly anymore these days. They kind of, don't really talk about it all that much. Album cover's kind of boring and kind of cold and whatnot, but it sold great. But this was their last really big selling album for quite a while. So, whatever. But videos helped for sure. So, yeah, that's my next pick, Heart.
All right. Okay, my next one is Asia, Asia. Um, I just find the idea of this band and record a little bit bizarre. I mean, all these leftover prog guys were coming into the 80s. It just seems like this kind of music isn't in vogue. And then it's not exactly prog, but it's got this big boomy sort of production sound. Carl Palmer is just like pounding away on these pop songs. It just everything seems very incongruous on here. John Wetton, his voice is kind of like an acquired taste. He has to push a lot of air to get power out of it. And just it seems like there's so many improbable things about this thing being a big hit. I don't find the singles particularly well, like I said, more so. Well, it's a lot of things. It's the personalities of all the guys, the construction of the songs, the production. They just don't seem like hit songs to me, and yet this album became a big hit. I think one of the reasons it did well is frankly because of that album cover and the name of the band. It's just very
Yeah,
easy,
it's amazing. Yeah.
easy to sort out. They wisely didn't go with Wetton Downs Palmer, what you call it, right?
Yep.
How, and yeah, did I get everybody right there? I think I did. But yeah, it seems like marketing genius, and then as you move on, they still have the same marketing genius to them, but they fall off a cliff as they move on. So that's my first
I think
choice.
that was a Hail Mary album that clicked with people because you're
Yeah,
right. I think there was a lot of publicity about this kind of prog supergroup, even though at the time prog is kind of pretty much dead. I think it was very accessible. It's not a prog album. The album
yeah,
cover is great. The songs were played on the radio constantly. So I don't know. They were feeding the radio stations, is my guess. But it all kind of clicked there. But interestingly enough, that second album came out, which kind of follows a similar formula. People I think were already kind of like, yeah, all right, that's kind of over and done. We did that
yeah.
first album. We moved on to other things, kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Okay. Next one. I guess I don't have a physical of this anymore. Quiet Riot Metal Health. I bought this as a new release. I feel like I'm a little on the fence about this one. I suppose what I'm two things about it that I'm surprised about. I'm surprised that it goes 6 times platinum. To me, it sounds like an exciting situation where there's word of mouth and buzz, and there's kind of this new music and this new renaissance for metal, and metal is moving the fulcrum point from the new wave of British heavy metal over to Los Angeles. And lo and behold, you get a platinum album out of it, right? You fight your way to a platinum album. But to have it go 6 times platinum is very surprising to me.
Crazy.
Um, and then also just the idea that, past, well, not even past the hits. I mean, Come On Feel the Noise literally comes from the 70s, but there's some other songs on there that really sound dated in 1983 on that record. So there are a bunch of songs that you just think you almost imagine again most of those 6 million people being disappointed with most of the album.
Have you
Now,
listened
Mental
to that
Health,
album of late? Have you listened to it? I
yeah,
mean, it's really not all that good.
I know, it's a little uncool.
I mean, I
That
have
record,
it. I
right?
own it.
Yeah,
I bought it back in
yeah,
the day. I have it on CD still, and and you have to wonder, Martin, without Come On Feel the Noise,
yeah.
does anybody care about mental health?
Yeah, exactly. And then you compare that to Rat Out of the Cellar, which is a masterpiece start to
Yeah,
finish, and it's
right,
all
right.
brand new, shiny new,
And I think the point
interesting
is
music.
there are other big albums in this style of metal that came out right
Yeah,
around the same time that blow this album out of the water. But because
yeah.
of that one track, I mean, the title track is good, right? And there's some fun stuff on there, but it's really not all that great for 6 million copies.
Yeah. And it sounds like a lot of those songs are between the first two Japanese albums and 1983.
Right,
Like it's a
right.
bunch of old songs, and then they just got lucky. And Metal Health is perfectly put together as a new proper new style heavy metal anthem. That's great. And the name of the band is great. And they've got this awesome mascot in this great album cover too.
Yeah.
So that's cool. But yeah, I think it's pretty cool that they're in there. I believe this is February 83. So I think it's really early in 83. So it's literally kicking off the new hair metal situation.
Yeah.
They've got a buzz. People know these players. They've been around forever. Carlos is even a little bit of a guitar hero on the album and stuff. So yeah, they get the novelty hit like Motley Crue with "Smoking in the Boys' Room," and they've got a bona fide, good proper heavy metal classic
And
in
it's
here.
kind of like the Asia thing all over again, right? Massive for even though this is not their
Yeah,
first album, but massive big first album, and then they
yeah,
do a carbon copy with Condition Critical, and people are like, ah, right?
yeah,
Same thing with the Asia
exactly.
thing, right? It's like the first album is great, we love it, but then the second album comes out, it's too similar, and we're like, we're not interested anymore. We're moving on to other things.
Yeah,
Condition
yeah.
Critical was basically like a carbon copy of Metal Health.
Yeah, exactly. True. Yeah. Okay. And speaking of carbon copies, my next choice is Easy Top Afterburner, which I couldn't find a physical of this either. 5 times platinum. Um, and again, what we get is just Eliminator all over again, just a worse version and a version where they kind of remove some of the bottom end, and there's a few more synthesizers added to it. It's just a little more, anything that might have annoyed a fan of Eliminator, and there weren't that many annoyed fans because that thing did go diamond. But anything that annoyed you on that as a fan was amplified on Afterburner. Even the title is almost like self-deprecating, telling you, look, this is we're just going to do the same thing again. The album cover was amazing, but that was a redo, and the redo of the album cover thing, which they do in Recycler as well, is a smart idea. Tie it to Eliminator. That's a good idea, kind of thing. So you've got this sort of theme going with the car, and yeah. So but to have it go 5 times platinum is a little crazy. Just because I think anybody who looked at it a little bit critically would say there's not a lot of art here. There's a fresh, interesting new idea on Eliminator, and then they just hammered it to death. And just did kind of a worse version of it, and it still sold
Well, this
five
is
million.
a recurring theme here about rehashing successful formulas, and when is it too much to keep doing that, right?
Yeah,
Because I mean, I talk to people all the time, and like, I want bands to evolve from album to album. There's some people that want the same thing over and over and over again.
yeah.
So, I mean, we've already come across upon a whole bunch here that are just basically these albums we're talking about are like kind of continuing on of a formula that maybe it's past the point, but still sells really well because of that kind of blowback effect. But
Yeah. All right. So my final one is Blue Oyster Cult's Some Enchanted Evening. This is a very weird one in that Blue Oyster Cult essentially has this album goes platinum. They only have one other platinum album, and that's Agents of Fortune, which is surprising that's not beyond platinum. But really, you dig into that album, and I think a lot of those 1 million people are going to be very disappointed with much of the rest of the album. Tenderloin and Morning Final and Debbie Denise and all these songs, right?
spoiler alert, more on that in a minute.
Oh yeah, okay. But yeah, so this record, I hope you didn't pick this one. Did you pick this one?
No, I
No.
did not.
Okay. All right. So this record is so it comes after Spectres, which is already a drop from Agents of Fortune. It's a single live album, which is annoying people already.
Yep.
The track list on it has 7 songs, which is not very commercial thing to do. It's got Are You Ready to Rock, which was a minor hit off the previous album. It's got ETI, which was a minor hit off the previous album. It's got Astronomy, which is old and obscure and loved by the fans, but still it's long. It's a ballad. It's a weird ballad. And then it's got Kick Out the Jams, which might have been a little bit of a draw if you're turning this over and saying, wow, very cool. Wow, covering MC5. But it's kind of not that interesting a song. It's really not that great. It's got Godzilla, which was a pretty big hit from the previous album. Don't Fear the Reaper, massive hit. And then it's got We Got to Get Out of This Place on it, like a crap cover. So it's got 2 covers on it out of 7 songs. It's a single live album, and it is platinum along with Agents. And other than that, they've got a handful of golds, and that's it. So this is like literally tied for their most successful album. So this is a very surprising one. Like, why the heck was this big? Because it's not that there's a breakout live hit from this album. I can't off the top of my head. I honestly can't picture in my head having heard a single song directly off of this album, the live version, ever on radio.
Right.
I don't
No.
think I've heard anything on here once on radio. I'm sure I have, but I mean, I just don't remember it all because it's a long time ago. But suffice to say, there's no breakout live version hit off of this album at all.
Meanwhile, On Your Feet, On Your Knees didn't even make gold. And I don't know if Extraterrestrial Live even certified.
I don't. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think
And I
so.
remember hearing
Yeah.
stuff from that on the radio.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Crazy.
yeah, not it's so but it's so funny. So many people look back on that live album and they love it. They have this kind of like fantasy about how great of a live album it is, but when you really think about it, I think the other two live albums are better. I
Well,
think
it's got an amazing
the
album
cover
cover.
is great, yeah,
I
of
mean,
course.
literally one of the best. And that title, Some Enchanted Evening, is cool. There's no dash live 78 or anything
Yeah.
stupid like that. I mean, it really it kind of looks like a studio album. Um, but yeah, I think this did some of the heavy lifting as well, as did the back cover. Amazing back cover
Oh
too.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
All right, let's stay on Blue Oyster Cult. Let's talk about Agents of Fortune. So this is their biggest selling album, right, or studio album at least, and of
Yeah.
course driven by Don't Fear the Reaper. But what's amazing to me, and Martin, we've talked about this before, is like you have all these great albums before it and after it that didn't go gold, certainly didn't go platinum. There's some weird stuff on here. I like this album, but for most people, they focus on this and they call this the greatest Blue Oyster Cult studio record. But I think if you take Don't Fear the Reaper and ETI off this, and there's some other good stuff. The same, The Summer Love is really good. Tattoo Vampire is fun. But yeah, you mentioned, Tenderloin, and there's all these weird songs on here. And you mentioned Spectres before. I think Spectres is a vastly superior album. We could talk about another five Blue Oyster Cult albums that I would listen to any day of the week over this one. And I'm mystified by why some of these albums did not sell for the band, and yet this one everybody talks about, everybody bought. Is it because of
Mhm.
that one song?
Yeah.
I mean, how important are singles in this time period? I think you can't measure how important they are to sales of albums, and that's what people wanted. Record labels, it's got the hit single, we're gonna push the album. No hit single, move on to the
And the
next.
crazy thing, Pete, is they never ever did another song remotely like that ever again. They
Never,
didn't do one
never.
before or later. Most bands with a hit, there will be a similar two or three songs because it's a characteristic of the band and we're writing in that style. This
Yeah,
was a complete outlier song,
yeah,
never to be repeated, you know?
yeah. And it's funny, and I've talked about it before. I've seen Blue Oyster Cult live many times. I really think people love that song so much. A lot of people, I don't think, even care about the rest of the catalog. People will go see them live in concert and they will sit there throughout the whole show waiting for that one song.
Yeah.
You get no reaction from them to anything else. Maybe Godzilla mildly interests them, but as soon as Don't Fear the Reaper gets
Yeah.
on, they jump up, they run to the stage, they're singing, they're doing whatever, and then they go
Yeah.
home. It's like I got to see Don't Fear the Reaper. That's all I care about. I don't get it. But you're right. It's an outlier song completely, and I think people just love it so much they're willing to put up with all the rest of it or not just to hear that song, and
Yeah.
that's why they bought this album. You know,
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Blue Oyster Cult. I have Agents of Fortune. What else you got? Nothing.
Yeah.
I love that song. I got the album. Great, good for you.
Yeah.
All right. Where do I go next? How many do I have? Four in this round, right? Is that what we did?
Yeah. Three left.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna go Van Halen OU812. Mega seller for the band. Mega seller for the band. I mean, they're obviously on a Sammy high here. 5150 did really, really well for them. I mean, this band, all their albums sold really, really well. I find this is like Van Halen light, Van Halen pop. I remember when this came out, I did not like it at all. But man, these songs were just monsters. I mean, again, the MTV factor here. I mean, you had, you know, Feel So Good, Finish What You Started, Mine All Mine. I mean, just When It's Love, Cabo Wabo. I mean, these were monster songs. But Martin, I listen to this now and I'm like, this is kind of like a Sammy Hagar pop album, solo album, and
Yeah.
not so much a Van Halen album. But people love it. I mean, the production's good. There's loads of hits. It's kind of like a summertime album. I think when this came out, it kind of hit at the right time. It's like it's the mid '80s, and but I don't know. I would much rather listen to For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge or, even Balance of Power over this one. I think 5150 deserves all the credit it gets. I just never really understood the fascination with this record, but people
You know,
seem to love it.
the funny thing, if you think about it, as you're moving through that whole glut of hair metal bands and albums, Van Halen just had their own lane, right? They
Yeah,
they
because it
had
wasn't like
they
anything else. No,
yeah,
you're
they
absolutely right.
picked a few things from the hair metal world, but not really. They didn't dress hair metal. They did power ballads. They did pop ballads. That's really about it, right? Um, but they were still this band with an interesting large amount of personality, and they're just moving through this hair metal thing in their own lane. So maybe it did well because it's the only thing of its kind, and it's like it's a genre unto itself. And I'm going to own one album from this genre. I only have one choice, and it's OU 812.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, if you're just interested in those radio songs, right, and you want that kind of those feel good moments from the band, I mean, there's lots of them on there,
yeah.
for sure. It's just I remember so many people who were just in love with the Roth era, like thinking, God, when is Van Halen going to rock again, right? Enough with this
Mhm.
pop stuff, right? But again, this maybe is appealing to people who never bought any of the David Lee Roth albums, right? Because all of a
Mhm.
sudden this is something completely different, and it's not like Motley Crue, and it's not like Rat and everything else.
Yeah.
It's whatever. All right, Journey, Trial by Fire. Steve Perry comes back to the band. Woohoo! We're buying it. This album is not very good. I know there are people who defend it. I've complained about this album here on the channel before, and I think this was just. I mean, look at the picture on the back of the album. You've got the band looking one way, Steve looking totally
Yeah.
disinterested the other direction. What does that tell you? I'm in it for the money. It's the only reason I'm doing this album. And it's a long album. This is right in the middle of the CDs being like 75, 80 minutes long. There's too many songs. There are a few good ones. It's not a complete loss, but it's got the big ballad that was a hit, When You Love a Woman. But it just, to me, this just screamed that we're getting back together to bring some excitement back to the band, to make some money. I knew Steve wasn't going to stick around, and he didn't. And it sold millions of copies because people were so excited that they were back together again. But sometimes these bands, when they break up, they need to stay broken up because it's like the Blackmore Gillen thing, right? It's sometimes guys just don't get along. It's just the way it is. All right, how many was that? One more, right? My
I think
last.
yeah, one more. Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna go with Chicago 17. I think it's their biggest selling album. Millions and millions and millions and millions of copies, hit singles all over the place. Hard Habit to Break. Along Comes a Woman. You're the Inspiration. Blah blah blah. I used to kind of like this album. To me, I just can't stand any of the pop Chicago anymore, and I just feel like the essence of what made Chicago so great in the late 60s and the 70s is kind of gone here. Instead of all the great horns and, intricate arrangements, it's lush. David Foster produced this. It's all these synths. Peter Cetera now is doing basically everything. There's barely any guitar on here, barely any horns on here. This is like kind of like a pop, R&B pop for the masses. And I get why people like this. People love pop music. People love hit singles. I just have a hard time thinking that something like this outsells really cool albums like Chicago 8, Chicago 7, the more adventurous stuff. Again, different decade. Sure, it's the 80s now. Bands like this have to change, but this just remains like for people. It's funny, people who say they love Chicago and list this or Chicago 16 as their favorite albums really don't like the horny stuff from the 70s.
Mhm.
That's the truth of it all. So yeah, so it's a Chicago for a different audience for a different decade. I get it. But yeah, this sold a gazillion copies, more so than probably a handful of those really great Chicago albums from the 70s. But I don't really get it, but whatever. That's what people like. So Chicago 17. My final pick.
Sweet. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't really have any honorable mentions, but I did want to mention that I did make a switch with, I was going to talk about Def Leppard Hysteria. And I just feel that that record just, the lyrics are insipid. The production hasn't stood up. I really don't feel, there's just something impermeable about the production sounds, even though they're writing these massive hits for that album to sell that much. I just think it's like way too many copies to do that well. And I don't feel that way about Pyromania at all. I feel like that
No, no.
deserves all its accolades. And then the other funny one I looked up that disqualified was Slipknot because I was thinking that I would find some massive sellers there. Slipknot hasn't sold that many records, or at least they haven't gone back for certification very much. I mean, maybe they are too extreme. They're kind of a platinum band and very consistent,
Oh, for sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but they're not a five times
Well, I
platinum
mean, I
kind of
was
band
no, they're
anymore.
not. But I mean, just think about it. So we're going back to
Mm.
what? So what was that first Slipknot album? Was that 99,
Oh
2000,
boy, yeah, around there, yeah.
I remember because I remember my stepson was really into them at the time, and I'm just thinking, I remember like listening to that first album and thinking, how the hell are like young kids into this? This is pretty extreme for the time, right?
Yeah.
The way they looked and everything, and then the lyrics, and there's a lot of questionable stuff in those lyrics, and I was surprised that
Yeah.
so many people were jumping on board the Slipknot wagon. So I think they were popular enough. Yeah, not a 5 million copy selling band, but they were. I think those first couple albums were platinum, at least for that time.
You know, the interesting thing about a band like that, and there might be a show idea in here, but that band has gotten extremely wealthy by just selling a lot of concert tickets more than
Hmm.
right. They are a way bigger band in the live world, kind of like an Iron Maiden, right? They're a way bigger band in the live world than they are when it comes to selling records, right?
I will say, I mean, I'm not an enormous fan. I've seen them live a couple times. They put on a really great show.
Me too. Yeah.
There,
Yeah.
there are some bands that just have that knack. I think another band that comes to mind, and I'm not a fan at all, but Ramstein
Hmm.
also is another band that nobody really buys their albums, but when they tour,
Yeah.
they sell out everywhere and they sell out
Yeah.
big venues, right? So there's
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
about the allure of a band that's more known as a live band. And, they can put out albums every couple of years, whatever, and, the hardcore fan base will buy them. But when they go play live,
Yeah.
people go.
Yeah.
People.
Yeah. Cool. Nice.
All right. There you have it, everybody. Pick some ones down in the comments below that you feel are big albums and you just don't get why they're really big, or maybe you kind of like them, but you're kind of surprised they're so big. So, Martin, before you go, get us caught up on what's going on with new books and things and podcasts and contrarians.
Well, this is kind of funny. So yesterday, the Spanish version of my Guns N' Roses book arrived. Just one copy, my sample copy, but I'm not selling the Spanish version. But of course, this is the most recent book, and you can get that at martinpopoff.com. And what I'm doing, it's slow in July all the time. From now until the end of the month, I mentioned this on a Contrarian show. If you go to my site and buy this album only in the US or Canada, I'll throw in a mystery book and I'll sign that as well. So you get two books signed by me off, and one will be a mystery book that I'll pick and throw in the package kind of thing. But yeah, martinpopoff.com for all the books. Still got the Big Maiden book, and my audio podcast, History in 5 Songs with Martin Popoff, and our video channel, Contrarians.
Cool. Cool. Sounds good. Let's see, what do we got coming? We got a busy weekend here on SOT. So we've got the professor's picks in just a couple hours. Ken Golden telling us about new album releases here on this Friday. We've got 4 Fusion Friday song battle tonight. We've got the next episode of Let's Jam tonight. We've got tomorrow. We've got Jamie Laszlo and the review crew. We've got Simon Bray and Stephen Reed from the UK Connection, their solo show that they do without me. That's coming up tomorrow. And then Sunday, I will be ranking my top 10 albums from Black Oak, Arkansas. Are you a Black Oak, Arkansas fan, Martin?
No, I've
I didn't
tried
think so.
so many times over the years, and I've owned all of those records, right? And they look heavy, they look great, they look wild. They are not wild. I don't know. Something. His voice is wild. But no, I
Nobody sounds like
just
it.
no, I don't like any of those albums.
It's such a messy catalog too. I was like, I knew, people have been asking for years, and I always had a bunch of them. So I'm like, all right, because there's Black Oak, Arkansas, there's Black Oak, Jim Dandy's Black Oak, Jim Dandy's Black Oak, Arkansas, Jim Dandy's. It's just crazy. So I'm like, I'm just gonna do
Yeah,
my favorites, like whatever. So,
yeah.
so that's coming up on Sunday and possibly more. So thanks for watching, everybody. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube all the damn time. Please subscribe already. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and click on that notification bell so you get alert of all of our content as a post. And please do hit the like button before you leave. Please go check out Martin's links and give him some love over there. And we'll see you next time here at the Fun House. For Martin Popoff, I'm Pete Pardo. Enjoy your Friday. Don't miss out on all the programming here, and we'll see you then. Take care. Bye bye.